structure or small event like that can affect the whole culture, because after that people have started making short form games like all over the place in Norway, and this is like the preferred way of making games now. We realized like in 2000 whatever we couldn't make like big rule books in a week, so we just make short little games and they work, and we play them together and play them at cons and for fun and as warm-up games, and that's become like sort of a style. So we decided to push this down the throat of the world out there, so we translated all the games to English and put them on our blog, Norwegian Style, and then we made a book of them as well, which is called Norwegian Style, which has been read by people in many different European countries and in the States as well. And yeah, here's a few of the games. I was going to have pictures, but sorry, I didn't manage to do this in time. There's one game called Wanderer, which is a traditional fantasy role-playing game about a world with magical storms. So that's like one end of the spectrum. You have another game called It Wasn't Me, which is more like a party game. It's a murder mystery where one of the players has killed some celebrity and you have to find out who. But at any point in the game you can say it wasn't me, or you can say lie and write it on a card, and then the other player has to revise their explanation, but you can only do it certain times. That's been played to death, or at least 10 times, in other words, at different cons in the States. So that's like one of our hit games. Completely unexpected for me, because I didn't even see it as a role-playing game. It shows how much I know. And then you have my own game, Zombie Porn, which was, since I didn't win, I talked about this competition, right? Since I never win that competition, I decided I was going to lose it. So I made the most horrible game I could think of, which was Zombie Porn. It's about zombies trying to survive in the undead entertainment world. They run around trying to steal each other's limbs, because you have a set of different limbs that you draw on cards. And because if you have enough limbs, you can play better movie scenes. Of course, you have to describe all the movie scenes. There's different mechanics for that. But of course, if you literally or figuratively or not, if you fuck over the other players, you get a lot of angst and you lose love for them. And if you have too much angst, you implode. And if you don't have enough love at the end of the game, you can't win. So it's really a mechanical balancing issue. And it's a very grotesque and fun game. Some people have problems with it, but most people just see it as good. There you go. Yeah, I talked about the international love. It's been really good for us to see that our games are being played abroad, and that they're getting some of the, and it's actually influencing people, some designers as well. And I recently designed a game together with American designer Jason Morningstar, he's also like famous in the indie scene. He makes lots of games the whole time. Anyone heard of Jason Morningstar? He's made a game called Fiasco, which is basically the Coen Brothers movie game, and he's made a game called Grey Ranks, which is about child soldiers in Warsaw, or in Poland. So we made this game together, and that's based on an earlier design I had. It's called Love in the Time of Satan. It will be played later after. Yeah. There's also a LARP connection. See, quite good. In Norway, the LARP and role-playing scenes sort of split apart in the 90s, because role-players were still doing their own thing, and not really experimenting much, and the LARPers were doing like really weird shit, and thinking about stories and plots in new different ways, and how to immerse properly and all these techniques. We didn't really take them seriously, because they were weird and hanging out in the forest and smoking weed and doing polyamorous things with each other. So we were kind of freaked out by them. But then it started growing together again, and now we're influencing each other again in the designs, which is cool. Because I think you can never learn enough as a game designer. You have to try as many different forms as you can. All right. So, what are the differences between Norwegian and American indie games? Well, American indie games are very often focused on resource management, so balancing these points against these to see if you can get the result. They're often based on on the assumption that players want conflict with each other and in the game. So you fight against other players with dice to see who gets narrative control, and your character often has like one conflict in every scene. That's one of the maxims of the Ford style. In Norwegian games, it's often based on cooperation. You know, we're all on the same side, we're just trying to make a good story. Maybe we have conflict if it fits with the story, maybe not. Maybe we just sit around and create other forms of stories, immersive tales or absurd things or whatever. There's a lot of absurdism as well, and different forms of narrative. So while the Americans really are making hard systems for pushing the players into conflict and into dramatic tension, we are more like, let's sit together in a room and feel weird together, I guess. And let's see. Yes. This is my favorite part. I have a very superficial theory about why this difference exists. And it's based on my preconceptions as a European about Americans. So you'll be interested to hear. Alright, so because it seems to me that while American culture is more focused on the individual and the individual rights and follow your own heart and follow your dream, in Norway we're social democrats, so we're all about, I'll help you, you'll help me, let's do this thing together. We're all supposed to be equal, we're all supposed to treat each other as equals. And that's reflected, at least you can see this reflected in game systems. While we are, game masterless, free-form games, Americans make structural, competitive role-playing games where players go head-on with each other. You claim your right, you show your strength. While it seems to me again that in the States there's a stronger focus on fighting for your resources. You have to earn your money. You have to compete with the next guy, and there's a bigger difference between really wealthy and really poor people. In Norway, again, most of us have enough money to get by, and at least the focus on money used to be small. That's changed in recent years. We have to be loyal, and we're getting really horrible from it. But when I was a kid, and when most game designers grew up, we were all about, money doesn't matter. Let's not talk about money. It's an ugly word. So resource management, we don't really do that in our games. We try to avoid it. So that's again, maybe it's rubbish, but to me this seems to make sense when it comes to comparing the game design cultures. I know. We'll talk about it later. Cool. Well, I'll agree with you on everything. Okay, the future bit. I don't even know why I put that in there, because I hate predicting the future. So I might just skip this altogether, actually. I have no idea where things are going. Sorry I even put that slide. That is actually the presentation. But I would very much like to have questions from the audience. I'll just put this first slide back up.
Yeah. You already mentioned some of your favorites, but since I heard the first time about the site, the Forge. So, is there any other games you could mention and tell a little about them? Maybe you could choose 2 games with different features.
From the Forge?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's one game called Primetime Adventures, which is probably it's pretty hard to kill as one of my favorites because I've had such a lot of fun with it. In Primetime Adventures, you create your character by deciding on some central issues, because it's made to emulate television shows. It's made to be like the Buffy or the Firefly or X-Files role-playing game. So you have specific issues for your protagonists. And you have what's called a screen presence every session. You predefine how long your campaign is going to be, like 5, 7, or 9 sessions, and then you set up this story arc, which tells you how much screen presence you will have in every session, from 1 to 3. which means that in some, okay, let's say that in this session you have 2 points, you have 3 points, you have 1 point. That means we will see in this session, we will see that your issue comes to the front. We will see you like as a big supporting player trying to, maybe push it in by showing differences or highlighting or pushing him into extreme situations, and you'll be more like taking a back seat, just hanging around and you'll play your character, but you won't be in the spotlight. So this is reflected in 2 ways, both in how many dice you get to roll or cards you get to draw in conflicts. Because when you're the highlighted one, you get lots of cards. You get 3 cards. You get 1, you get 2. But also in instructions to the players, what they're supposed to do with and around each other. So, okay, let's take an example. Say an issue that one character might have in a TV show. What sort of issues do you like? Scully and Mulder or Buffy or whatever?
Lost twin brother.
Lost twin brother, yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so you lost your twin brother, but now it's finally the session where, this is going to come to its climax at least. Yeah. So, maybe I, as a game master, introduce hints to your twin brother, or you find his location finally. You might just, be driving him there and talking to him along the way. You might contrast stuff. You might start going like, yeah, what do you need a family for? I've survived with a family for a long time. Let's go somewhere else and do something else. Forget about that stuff. You should stop being so hung up. Or maybe even you decide to be, a bit evil and kill the twin brother because he's a bad guy or whatever. So you're kind of trying to push him to get even more into this issue. And after this session, you will resolve your issue. That means you actually rewrite your character bit. The lost twin brother is no longer such a big deal. Now it's something new. And they have other things as well. They have scene requests, which was very new when that came out, which means that when the game master sets the first scene, and after that you take turns saying, okay, now I would like to have a scene where we do this or that, and that's controlled by the players. And the very best part is at the end of the game when